Hello again, how have you been? I hope the answer is a positive one. How have I been? Well, I've been just peachy. But in all seriousness, I'm really sorry for my lack of uploads. I just wanted some time away from things, not necessarily the internet, just YouTube. But enough about that, let's get focused. I recently discovered that a few friends of mine were playing through the entire Halo storyline in chronological order, with their most recent journey being on Halo 4's Spartan Ops, and I thought to myself, you know what, Dave? You haven't played Spartan Ops properly since it released on the 360. Hell, you haven't even finished the massive majority of it on the MCC. So you know what I did? I started playing it again. On solo. Legendary. And it got me thinking, was Spartan Ops as bad as some people, myself included, really made it out to be, or did it have some kind of merit and appeal? So let's go talk about that I just said. Yes. Also, ignore him in the background, he's just there for reasons. Okay, let me get it out of my system and express to you my blunt, honest opinion of Spartan Ops. It isn't good. It's really not good at all. It's repetitive, the story was hastily abandoned, thus making the point of completing it in the first place slightly diminished, and it reused a lot of locations. Some were from the campaign, and some were from the multiplayer maps. But this is how I feel about the mode. But I've heard similar opinions from others going all the way back to Halo 4's release, and I feel that this is a great shame. 343 obviously set out to do something different with this mode, but unfortunately the timing and execution was wrong. I'm sure we're all familiar with Firefight at this point, a mode where you can battle endless waves of enemies depending on your preference for as long as you like, or until you run out of lives. Spartan Ops was going up against Firefight in a sense, because ultimately, if you take away the voiceover, the objectives, and the cinematics, that's all Spartan Ops boils down to. Killing wave after wave of enemies with no particular goal in mind outside of survival. I like to think that Spartan Ops was meant to be a kind of spiritual successor to Firefight that blended the action of Firefight with the intrigue of the story, and to their credit, they did try to do something that Halo had never seen before. I mean, come on, episodic story missions that were released over the span of 10 episodes after launch, who wouldn't find that interesting? But here's where I felt that Spartan Ops went wrong, and we can discuss what people have gone over for years, but that won't really accomplish much, so here's just a small list of pet peeves that I have. Death has no consequence, and that's the first thing. Death has absolutely no consequence on the player, regardless of difficulty, and no matter how you choose to view it, giving this kind of power to a player is going to alter how they choose to take on the challenge ahead. Why bother hanging back to take out the tougher enemies from a distance if you could just charge in with a plasma grenade and hope to get a lucky stick before you're gunned down? If things could be changed, I'd say that Spartan Ops is in dire need of a death cap. Say you die 10 times and then you hear Palmer say over the comms something like, "Crimson's being slaughtered down there, I'm pulling the plug," or anything similar to the mission fail audio from Colonel Holland in Reach's firefight. Though, for this to work, I'm convinced that Spartan Ops would need to be changed a lot, because as it stands, there are a lot of unfairly difficult positions to easily find yourself in, especially on Legendary, and the fact that some of these maps are massively open with little cover is not ideal. I'm just saying, if I could do Spartan Ops over, I'd make the playable zones a bit more compact and add a limit of 10 deaths before mission failure, because without any kind of consequence to dying, it takes that adrenaline rush out of you that you feel when you're 5 enemies away from victory and 1 death away from failure. Buttons, buttons, and more buttons. Good God, does Spartan Ops rely too much on pushing buttons? The majority of missions seem to be something like this.
Welcome to Heck, Crimson. Get ready for a fight. Oh, hey, is that a Forerunner majig? Crimson, activate that thing. Oh no! Prometheans! The only way to stop them from endlessly spawning is to push buttons. Good job, Crimson. Return to base.
And it goes on and on and on, continually throughout each mission, whether you're on the Infinity fighting off a Promethean invasion or down on the surface of Requiem battling Covenant. Human-themed, Covenant-themed, Forerunner-themed, it doesn't matter. Something always needed to be pushed to progress, and it didn't help that the rest of Spartan Ops was already seen as repetitive. My next complaint is also my biggest, because I'm a story buff. For the most part, the story of Spartan Ops does not impact the main narrative too much. It keeps to itself, but it also has that grand feeling of something else being at play. And in this story, that grand thing was the Janus key. As a warning, I'm going to detail some Spartan Ops spoilers here, so if you want to avoid that, skip ahead to the time that you're seeing on the screen right now. Still here? Good. The Janus key was a Forerunner tool that gave a user the real-time location of every single piece of Forerunner technology in the galaxy. It had 2 halves that were hidden on Requiem. The essence of the librarian gave the full key to Catherine Halsey, which was then split into two pieces, one in the possession of the UNSC and another in possession of Halsey and Jewel Umdama. After a failed assassination attempt on Halsey, the story ends with her ambiguously claiming her desire for revenge. Whether this was revenge against the UNSC for an attempted assassination or against Jewel for the loss of her arm is never revealed in Spartan Ops. But unfortunately, due to the poor performance of this mode, 343 did not see it fit to continue the episodic updates, and the story was left unfinished. That is, until Halo Escalation. But by and large, at least in my opinion anyway, the story is very hastily and clumsily wrapped up there with absolutely no impact on the next big game in the story, which was Halo 5. And that's even more confusing to me given that the lead writer of Halo 5 was also heavily involved with the Spartan Ops story. But just think about that for a moment. This device that Halsey held in her hand had the location of every piece of Forerunner technology, every installation, everything, everywhere. Poof. Gone. And on that note, welcome back to those people who skipped ahead. We didn't say anything bad about you, I promise. But enough about that. Those are just a few things that I have a problem with when it came to Spartan Ops that I believe impacted the mode negatively, but despite knowing what I know about Spartan Ops, through the shortcomings, the disappointment, the repetition, and the frustration, I still enjoy playing it. Not on a regular basis, mind you, but I could happily turn my brain off for a few days and play through it beginning to end with very little difficulty. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I haven't played it properly on the MCC, so I'm currently doing a solo legendary run from beginning to end. In fact, something else that I'm doing for a bit of extra fun is an Excel document where I write down how many times I die per episode to find out my total death count by the time I reach episode 10. And I'm doing that out of curiosity, but also to create myself a goal beyond feeling cool that I beat it on Legendary alone. But again, I can play it with no problem and still see the value in the idea, however poorly I feel the execution was. In fact, to compare it to something, I'd say that my feelings towards Spartan Ops mirrors my feeling towards Sonic 06. I know that the game is not something that everyone desires. I know that the game was poor and that many glaring issues leaves a lot to be desired. But there's still a charm to it that I can enjoy. But what about the future? Spartan Ops itself is very likely dead and buried with no consideration in a revival in its current form. However, I do think that there is something to be earned from this. Imagine Halo Infinite with an episodic release similar in setup to Spartan Ops, but avoiding the obvious traps that it once fell into. The idea of free content like that being released on a bi-monthly basis could be something special, but only if it were heavily changed. My personal suggestions would be for a storyline that is going to link up to something, possibly leading into the next big title or spin-off. It needs to have a small to medium-sized battlefield, unless there are vehicles included of course, with much more interested and varied forms of combat, and as much as I understand the need to pad some missions out, less is more. 343 no doubt knows where they went wrong with Spartan Ops before, and I'm sure they'd be able to create something fairly innovative if they had the time. I'd love to see what could be done, and given that Infinite is piquing my interest much more than previous games so far, I'd be very excited to hear of a new extension to the story coming along in the future. Realistically, I don't see it happening, but a man can dream. That's going to be a wrap from me on this video, but I'm interested in your opinion on Spartan Ops or any ideas of how you would do it differently if you could, so if you have anything to say, please let me know. But just before I go, I wanted to direct some love and attention to WyvernZu, who has just been hired by 343 as a content designer for Infinite's new Forge mode. If you're not familiar with her work, she's built many impressive things with Halo 5's Forge, from maps to prefabs and a lot of really innovative stuff. So if you would like to give her a follow on Twitter or just offer a polite congratulation, then there's a link in the description where you can do that. With that said, I'm going to get out of here because there's a portal to hell in my office and I really need to do something about that. Thanks for watching, see you next time.